Greetings, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, Matsuka Gwanji. How is it everywhere you are and wherever you are joining us from? And this is Zimbabwe Daily. We are back again on our program Behind the Mic. And of course, yours truly at TSITSI Patience Mashiri being your host. And I have a very special guest in the house today, joining me today. And that is the lead president, Linda TSUNGIRIRAI Masarira. And of course, she calls herself Mambo Kazi Masarira. And I would want to tell you that before we start our show, remember, encourage people to register to vote. Go and check via star 265 hash if you are a registered voter, so that you will know where you'll be voting at in the next general election. So today on our program Behind the Mic, we are going to be talking a lot with the lead president. We are going to talk about the governance, we are going to talk about policies, and of course, as we are celebrating the 16 days of activism against the gender-based violence, we are also going to talk about how is the situation in terms of violence in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for joining us today, Madam President Mambo Cards Linda TSUNGIRIRAI Masarira.
Thank you very much, Tsitsi. I'm delighted to be here, and a very good morning to all the viewers.
Maybe we just have to get into it and talk about probably I would want to start with something. I hear that the government finds a partner in terms of making sure that they generate revenue at the NRZ, because you were also part of the NRZ in everything that you used to do. What do you think? Do you think it makes sense, or do you think we'll be able to achieve results?
Honestly, I think the NRZ issue is now a case of Nava Iseremepo. We have heard about these partners for the past 10 years. We've heard of DIDG, we've heard of Russian partners, we've heard of Indian partners, but nothing really materializes because of the levels of corruption that we have in our country. Back in the day when I was still a worker at NRZ, I remember the late Air Commodore Mike Karakadzai actually went to India, said they'd bought locomotives, they'd bought wagons, but all that was never delivered. We speak about February 2021. I know government actually gave NRZ some funds, and the funds were misappropriated and nothing was done about it. And then you read in the press now that the Minister of Transport, Felix Mona, is actually saying they've found another partner, they're doing another capital injection into NRZ, but it is not materializing into something tangible. At the end of the day, what we really need to resuscitate and rehabilitate the NRZ is we need an independent commission, which is made up of different people from different sectors, technocrats, that will be able to ensure that the rehabilitation of NRZ becomes a reality. Right now, what we have even in the board or the executive management of NRZ are people who have got their own vested selfish interests, which are mainly primitive accumulation of wealth. They found NRZ as a playground for them to loot and cover their backs with whoever they're connected to. And my message really today to the president of Zimbabwe, Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, is he has to really look around the people around him, because they're using his name to cover up the shenanigans they're doing in destroying parastatals in Zimbabwe. It is imperative maybe for him to consider reintroducing the Ministry of State Enterprises that will be dealing particularly with parastatals, because the situation we have right now in Zimbabwe is the ministers, the parent ministries, ministers and permanent secretaries are now viewing most parastatals as their tuck shops, where they manipulate the tender processes, where they manipulate the funds in those parastatals for their own benefit. That is why you see that we've got problems in every parastatals. We've got problems in ZESA, we've got problems in NRZ, we've got problems in NASA, we've got problems in Tel One Network, etc. So if the president is clear that they want to rid Zimbabwe of corruption, I think they have to start the parastatals, because that is where the worst corruption is happening. And most of these people are actually forwarded from the government itself. So at the end of the day, I think they have to sit down and introspect, reevaluate the people they're giving these positions, that they have the capacity to deliver. Do they have the capacity to turn around, or they just have the capacity to be able to protect political interests? If we want to develop this country, there's a time that we have to put the economic interests of this country first and not the political interests. And what we have seen over the past, I think, 2 decades is ZANU-PF trying to have this retention on power. But their agenda of retaining power in putting their own lapdogs has actually destroyed parastatals, destroyed the development that we've been wanting to see in parastatals, and it is a real major cause of concern, which ZANU-PF as a ruling party is supposed to interrogate in the Politburo, which the president himself needs to sit down with his close allies and ensure that maybe they do a reshuffling of ministers, because it doesn't make sense that right now we have the Minister of Energy saying, so we cannot supply electricity. So does it mean that there was no one who was monitoring what is happening at Kariba?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we know that they're trying to renovate the thermal stations in Wange, etc., etc. But what has the ministry been doing over the past 5 years? We are supposed to be looking at other sources of getting energy. In most advanced countries, they don't use one energy source. Here in Zimbabwe, we just use thermal and hydro. What has the government been doing to actually interrogate on using maybe renewable energy to have backup in hospitals, in industry, etc., etc.? We are at this stage as a country, this blackout stage, because the Minister of Energy, Soda Shemu, has been sleeping on laurels, has not been playing his role, his part, and ensuring that they are always up to the task in terms of ensuring that we've got sufficient energy in Zimbabwe. Yes, the energy crisis is regional, but that does not mean that we've got an excuse. We always have to be up to the task and ensure that we've got energy, because as long as we do not have energy, there is no way that the NDS1 is going to be achieved. And there is no way that we are going to revive our economy. I mean, President Mnangagwa is on record that he wants to revive the economy. He wants to make sure that Zimbabwe is restored to its former glory. But say when the minister is sleeping on duty. And some people argued, no, it's not the minister's fault, it's the president's fault. And I'll come back and say it is the minister's fault, because when the president appointed the Minister of Energy, he appointed him to oversee the affairs to do with energy. And it is clear that Soda Shemu has failed the very same way they removed Fortune Chassis, who was actually far much better than Soda Shemu, is the very same way they should remove Soda Shemu and maybe put back Fortune Chassis or find another person to be the Minister of Energy.
Maybe before we come back again to talk about ZESA and probably the water levels that we have right now in Kariba. You talked about commissions having independent boards to monitor the kind of corruption that happens in Zimbabwe. So do you think these commissions really work? Because when you're looking at Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, which oversees the corruption that happens in Zimbabwe, and we are looking at the AGs.
Can I hold you there?
Yeah.
ZAC is a toothless bulldog. We cannot really say we've got an anti-corruption unit in this country. I will tell you right here that the NRZ former workers actually gave a dossier to ZAC on the corruption that is happening at NRZ. They have not investigated.
True. And also,
and there are a lot of cases that are pending. And whether the investigations have been done, we have never had the results. Have you ever seen a report from Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission?
No.
On the cases that they've handled, how far they've gone? It is just one of those toothless bulldog, useless commission chowing taxpayers' funds for nothing. When I'm speaking about independent commissions to oversee maybe the running of the NRZ, I'm speaking of a commission that will have different technocrats, people with the expertise, people who've worked in the railways, who understand the railway industry, who can do the checks and balances. Right now, when we look at it, the current GM of NRZ is a lawyer by profession. What does she know about running a big enterprise like NRZ? You look at the new management that she came and put in during the restructuring program, they've got no knowledge at all about NRZ. NRZ thrives on institutional memory. That is why the staff working regulations of NRZ clearly states that for one to be a general manager in the NRZ, he or she should have worked in at least 4 departments of the NRZ with thorough understanding of how that system operates. The NRZ has its own training center. People from the NRZ were trained in the NRZ training centers where they've got the actual training on how to run that organization. But unfortunately, they've been turning things around, taking graduates from universities who will never understand and appreciate the NRZ system because it is a unique system on its own. So as long as we are going to be adopting these people who do not even understand how that system is run, there is no way we're going to be reviving that particular NRZ system. When you look at it globally, we've got airlines, railway systems, they work uniquely, and you can never take a graduate to come and solve things that need institutional memory, that need hands-on experience. And that is what I'm talking about when I talk of systems like the NRZ. You can never solve them by taking a soldier and saying you're now the general manager or you're the board chair. It needs someone who understands the system, who has worked in the systems and knows what needs to be done.
As speaking of also the systems, we wanted to talk about maybe governance in Zimbabwe. So looking at, for example, let's talk about PEMSEC's work and also working in the ministry that he or she will be working in. Do you think our ministers, our permanent secretaries are able to separate between the political party they belong to, work, and also the government's work?
I think the oversight role in that particular regard is supposed to be done by the corporate governance unit, which has also been sleeping on duty. The problem that we have in our country is over politicization of issues. And this just does not happen in ZANU-PF. It also happens in TSITSI. It also happens in MDC. You look at the councils and their operations. People even fail to differentiate whether the council belongs to Harare or it belongs to TSITSI. So what we need to do is to come up with new systems that work. That has got separation of powers, separation of jurisdictions, separations of duties. And people should know that once they attain a public office, they are no longer working for their political party.
But for them.
They are working for the country, for the council, and for the people. But as long as we still have this toxicity, this polarity, this inindiri ZANU, indiri MDC, indiri lead, indiri TSITSI, apana kwatinoenda senyika, we need to get to a stage where we say, what is it that is best for the people of Zimbabwe before putting on our political jackets? Because whatever issue affects Zimbabweans affects everyone, regardless of whether they are TSITSI, MDC, ZANU, lead,
As long
ABBA,
as you are
etc.
from Zimbabwe.
For example, we look at the health crisis. We've got a problem with our health system, our general hospitals, our clinics, which are run by local authorities. But there is no seriousness to deal with those issues because of kudonzerana. When you look at the local councils, they'll say, tikazogadzisa makliniki, zvinozonzi izanu yaita. But you're the ones who are running the councils. Why can't you do something good and say, during this tenure when we're running the councils, we make sure that all clinics were working? That commitment isn't there because people are saying, when you look at the current government, they only want to fix things towards elections so that people have a short memory and say, but why don't we just make sure that we've got a functional economy, functional hospitals, functional everything? And then people will decide based on ideology which political party they want to vote for. But what is lacking in this country is the separation of issues. Everyone wants to be wearing a certain political jacket at every juncture of their life, but life doesn't operate that way. We have failed to develop our country because of that, because one thrives on the poverty of people and the other thrives on attacking the other for making people poor. But we as labor economists and African Democrats, we're saying we need a new political trajectory. We need to ensure that every Zimbabwean has got a comfortable livelihood. Every Zimbabwean is living in a country without fear or want. But what we have is people are afraid of either ZANU-PF or TSITSI or MDC because of the intolerance that exists. I mean, every person should be able to come to walk even to the Minister of Health office and knock and say, we've got this proposal that we want to do. We think that things should go this way. Or they should have even an online platform where people can post their ideas so that they are adopted. We want a situation where even the local authorities can get funding from twinning with other cities and develop the local clinic clinics, develop the roads, etc., etc. But we're not seeing that. What we see for 5 years after elections is ZANU, MDC, and Triple C throwing stones at each other at the expense of people's livelihoods, at the expense of development. No one is with that sincerity to say, let's fix Zimbabwe, let's make Zimbabwe comfortable for
Prezo,
everyone.
munotaurisa. We want to talk about maybe the policies, the bills that are made in parliament. Maybe let's talk about the patriotic bill. What do you think? Do the government really put in these bills, these policies for thinking about the nation as well? Because if you can, myself, I'm patriotic, but I might have different values with someone. So what do you think about the patriotic bill?
Honestly, from my perspective, I think the patriotic bill was way long overdue. And this patriotic bill is not peculiar to Zimbabwe alone. In America, they've got the same patriotic bill, but it's called the Logan Act. In Nigeria, I've forgotten what it's called, but they also have it. And several countries actually have these laws that protects the integrity of a nation. One unfortunate thing that we've never wanted to interrogate, especially most African countries, is that the European countries, Western countries actually use African countries to fight against themselves so that they always exhibit a suffering nation, suffering people, places where you cannot invest. I mean, we actually downgrade ourselves with what they tell us to do, which they do not do in their own countries. And it is a real cause of concern. Look at the Julian Assange story and what is happening to him. And that's the American government that actually wants his head because it's been exposing American secrets. He's been exposing things that are happening in America. But when we say we want to also protect our territorial integrity, we've got our very own people saying, how then do we become secure as a nation? Every on what is happening. There's no country without problems. There's no country without its own negatives. Right now, we're only getting to learn about how the UK Parliament is also very corrupt, how their own MPs actually awarded themselves 2,000 extra salaries and all that. But back in the day, you would never hear about some of these things. I think one of the biggest problems with us is we have too many trainings with these white people, funded by these white people who shove down their agendas right in us, and then we forget that we are Zimbabwe. As long as no investment is coming to Zimbabwe, it is not the American or the European or the Chinese or the Russian who suffers. It is the Zimbabwe. As long as we are painting the wrong picture about Zimbabwe, it is the Zimbabwean that suffers, and not the South African or the Zambian or the Ghanaian. It is actually the Zimbabwean. Because there are times when I have arguments. TSITSI, let's be honest. Is there anyone who sleeps without eating in Zimbabwe?
There are people, like there's someone whom I interviewed once who survived on one meal per day during COVID-19. So she had to cook food around 1 or 2 p.m. so that she will be able to sleep and also have.
The COVID-19 era was a totally different era. We were locked down and most countries face challenges. But why I'm asking this question, sometimes you have people arguing on Twitter that Zimbabweans are dying of hunger. Zimbabweans are not eating. Zimbabweans can't even afford food. But when you find in most butcheries, meat is going for about $3 a kg. And when we look at our informal traders, they actually make more money than people who are formally employed. So there's this narrative that is always put on social media that Zimbabweans are suffering, Zimbabweans are this, etc., etc. But when we also want to look back and reflect, I think Zimbabwe is one of the very few countries under the sun that people use cash to acquire everything. No one buys a house with debt in Zimbabwe. No one buys a car with debt in Zimbabwe. Everyone pays cash for everything that they have. And everything that they have, they actually own. But we are the ones who cry the loudest that we suffer. We are poor. We are everything. But every Zimbabwean owns everything that he or she has. Unlike in South Africa, Botswana, or other countries where people actually have to take mortgages to buy houses, going to do hire purchase to buy furniture for for the house, etc., etc. So I think sometimes we need to be able to introspect and be factual. There's no country without poor people. There's no country without people with challenges. But we over exaggerate the situation in Zimbabwe. I always find a lot of people, Zimbabweans, will come back home after a very long time. But you know, because when we're on social media, we say a whole lot of things, some of them which I also get shocked. And when you ask, I remember just yesterday on Twitter, I was asking someone that, are you saying that Zimbabweans are not eating proper food? There's no food in Zimbabwe. This person in South Africa, come home. Come home and I want to work with you and I want you to show me where people are not having proper food in this country.
Yeah, maybe to come back again to you, I wanted to ask you this question because I saw a tweet that you also posted. What's your view on the 40,000 loans that our member of parliament got?
My view?
Yes.
I think I'll start by just unpacking how much that money would have done for the civil service.
Okay.
With 40,000 USD that was given to one MP, government was going to be able to pay one civil servant for 6 years, 540 USD that civil servants have been asking for. With 500,000 that they gave to one minister, the government was going to be able to pay $540 USD for 77 years to one civil servant. With 350,000 that was given to one deputy minister, the government was going to be able to pay $540 to one civil servant for 54 years.
Mama katoweka.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Why am I saying this? When people go to vote for legislators, they're going to vote for them to be able to enact laws that protect their welfare and their benefit. Government is on record saying they cannot pay civil servants in US dollar, and that is why they said they resorted to partial dollarization. They cannot pay $540 US because it's too much. The MPs never did enough lobbying for civil servants to get $540 US. And now they argue that the 40,000 loans or the 350 given to deputy minister or the 500,000 is actually a benefit which was long overdue. What benefit did you lobby for those who voted for you into office? That is the first question we're supposed to be interrogating. Number two, the civil servants bonus was about $200 US. They were not given in full. They were given half in November and the other half is coming in December because government said they could not pay it in full. And this is $200 US. But the government could deposit $40,000 US into MPs' accounts, could deposit $350,000 US into deputy ministers' accounts, could deposit $500,000 US in ministers' accounts. So that just shows that there are some shenanigans that have been happening. And I've actually been reflecting and saying, since 2018, opposition MPs were not attending the State of the Nation address. This year they attended because they've been given $40,000 US. For the past 3 months, we've never had any opposition MP speaking against corruption, booing, walking out or whatever, because vakaiswa mari mumwe. We have never had them speaking about the oversight role. I think we're at a time where the MPs were supposed to be interrogating where this money came from because the accommodation was not being catered for. For months, we've heard that Parliament has been failing to pay for the accommodation for MPs. But the very same Parliament has got millions to give the same MPs that they cannot pay for their accommodation. Then we go to the payment plan. How are these MPs and ministers and deputy ministers going to pay back this money in 7 to 8 months, which is left? Some have argued that their pensions will actually pay off the loans. And my argument is, number one, an MP is only pensionable if they have been in Parliament for 2 consecutive years.
10 years, yeah.
2, there are MPs that got in this year. Some who even got in after the recalls. How are they going to pay back these loans? Number 3, we have had debts, parliamentary debts, that have been cancelled by the Debt Assumption Act. Remember, in 2012, Tendai BT cancelled the $9 million vehicle loans for MPs because they say MPs could not pay them back using the same act. We have had the farm mechanization input, what they were cancelled using the Debt Assumption Act. We've got several loans that were cancelled in Parliament, some which have not been spoken about. But when we want to interrogate these issues, the MPs themselves will come out and want to protect themselves, yet they failed to protect the electorate, they failed to protect the civil servants, and they failed to protect all the workers in this country. So at the end of the day, one should not take the route of being an MP for primitive accumulation of wealth, which is what we have seen in our parliament for decades. And when people call them to account, they should not try to say we are the least paid in the region, because even all Zimbabwean workers are the least paid in the region. If they want benefits that are equivalent to other countries in the region or in the world, they should first lobby for all workers in Zimbabwe to have equivalent salaries in the region and in the rest of the world. They cannot want to cry foul that we're not getting sufficient benefits because they did not even get into parliament with meritocracy. People waited in a queue, sweating, hoping for a better future for them to be where they are. Some do not even have 5 O-levels, but there are people who went to school using their hard-earned money who also want a better life. And here they are, they stand and they try to do grandstanding that they deserve these loans. How do they deserve them? I mean, Parliament is actually supposed to come open to the people of Zimbabwe because the people of Zimbabwe are the employers of legislators. And show us those contracts, how those loans are calculated and how they'll be paid back. I watched the CCC presser yesterday. Prosper Mtemi will say we earn about $60 equivalent per month. So with the 60 US equivalent, that is where you want to pay back a $40,000 loan, a $350,000 loan, and a $500,000 loan. I mean, Zimbabweans need to introspect. Zimbabweans need to sit down and say, is this what we voted for? Because at the end of the day, that is when I will say, I think Zimbabweans deserve the leaders that they have. Because whether they were ZANU, they were CCC, they were MDC, and there's a certain white collar crime that is happening in parliament. Look at the levels of corruption, the laptops that were so expensive. That was just a tip of the iceberg. The Parliament of Zimbabwe needs to be investigated. We need to know how much of taxpayers' funds we've been losing through Parliament, because some people, that is why MPs don't want to leave Parliament. We have said it has always been ZANU-PF MPs who've been in Parliament for a long time, but the same also happens in the opposition. We've had people who've been MPs since 2002. And they don't want to leave Parliament because so basically, in conclusion on that issue, the MP's financial position is not peculiar to them alone. Their situation is also what every other Zimbabwean worker is facing. And I actually made my own clarion call and said, if you gave MPs or also government employees loans, give all civil servants, and let it be fair. Yes, give civil servants. They should also be given those loans. Yes, and let it be fair. Because MPs are also government employees, but employed by the people of Zimbabwe. So we cannot have a certain grouping of government employees getting certain benefits which other employees are not getting. There's no fairness at all in that.
Yeah, this was deep. I'm just thinking 500,000, and people were saying even the 500,000 wasn't approved in Parliament. And I'm just thinking, what do ministers and deputy ministers do? But anyway, it's a discussion for another day. I wanted to we are going to talk about 2 main issues, and then we close up our discussion because I can see that time is running up. So we are celebrating, or before we talk about the 16 days of activism against the gender, I wanted to hear from you as an opposition face as well.
Point of correction.
Yeah.
Labour Economists and African Democrats is not an opposition party. We do not want to be associated with the word opposition, because the word opposition is tainted in this country.
Okay.
LEAD is an alternative party. An alternative party that is proffering the solutions that we need to fix Zimbabwe. We are the fixer. We want to fix this country.
Mapawa. So, Linda, we want to talk about what's been happening. We've been seeing. I think before it came, we even produced a cartoon where we're saying it's kind of cultism, like which is happening in the ruling party right now. We see people who are saying vendors for ED, Chakati for ED. I know that the idea was not about putting the face of Mnangagwa on that when it started, because you know the history. It was going to be talked about economic development, but then we see the face. What do you think? Do you think it's cultism? What do you think? Your view?
Honestly, my view is if a certain political party comes up with their own mobilization strategy, it is not our business for us to be criticizing whatever they're doing. Because if I'm not wrong, the people who are doing this are actually supporters of that particular party. What we're supposed to be doing as an alternative party is to come up with our own mobilization strategies and other parties to do the same. But we waste so much quality time trying to interrogate, trying to insult what another political party is doing at the expense of us also coming up with our own initiatives to be able to come up with our own strategies. Like you rightfully said, when Young Women for ED was formed, it was not for Emerson Mnangagwa, it was for economic development. They wanted young women to be empowered to be able to play their part in the economic development agenda of this country. But maybe as a political party, they also said and say, no, we can utilize this for A, B, C, D, and E. And that is their business, that no one can actually say, why are they doing this? Because I remember in 2018, if I'm not wrong, there was Young Women for Chamisa and what. We never had a lot of people actually criticizing that and etc. etc. So I think my advice to Zimbabweans is, let's mobilize for our parties wherever we are and stop criticizing or paying attention to what other people are doing, because in the process we might derail ourselves from our own agendas in our own different political parties, trying to analyze and criticize and downplay whatever other people are doing. But what is important is to be mobilizing people to register to vote, selling our agenda, selling our ideology, and making sure that whatever party gets the votes that they think are beneficial to them to exist in the Zimbabwean political economy.
Perfect. Then I would want to know from you, as we are celebrating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, what as you always say, that it's not about the 16 days, but the 365 days, the whole year, commemorating to make sure that women are safe. So maybe as we are also talking about that, sometimes online platforms, they are very toxic. I saw something like they said that the first lady of Zimbabwe right now was kind of people are saying, is she going the same way that the former First Lady Grace Mugabe did, to interfere with the political life or with the government business, yet she is not part of the government? What do you think?
I think I cannot comment on that because I have not seen her interference in government business yet. But what I know is that she's a Politburo member, and that she also has a voice in the decision making of how ZANU-PF actually runs its operations. The interference in government, I haven't seen it yet, though I also have reservations on the finance minister actually allocating a budget to the First Lady. I've never heard about that before anywhere in the world, and we're still waiting to hear the justification of that allocation of funds to the office of the First Lady. I don't know, because I've never really heard about such a setup anywhere in the world. So I think maybe what we should be doing is to be demanding accountability from Professor Mthuli Ncube, and then thereafter, from his comments, we can then make our own assessment and say, is this proper or not?
Thank you so much. Your message for the 16 days of activism against gender?
My message is clear. We need to be the peace ambassadors. Peace starts with you and me. A lot of violence is happening in a lot of homes day in and day out, not just the homes, in our social spaces, on social media. If we want to build a united Zimbabwe, that united Zimbabwe can only come if we're tolerant of diverse views. Even as husband and wife, it does not mean that we will always click every day or we will always have the same ideas, but we have to we have to learn to speak about issues. We have to learn to use dialogue for conflict resolution and to tone down our words. People also don't realize that emotional abuse is the worst form of gender-based violence. The words that we speak continue lingering in the mind. That is why you'll find that a person can commit suicide or kill a person maybe 10 years later because of something that was said to them that kept on lingering in their brains. Let us strive to be the peacemakers. Let us strive to be peaceful people. Let us love each other and let love lead in our homes, at the workplace, in the kombi, muzupko, kwese, ngatidanane, sevana veZimbabwe.
Yeah, mune mamwe mashoko amungada utipa musati maenda. Hapasina chamasirira ka.
Oh no, before I go, I just want to say, give us a chance as Labour economists and African Democrats. We've got a lot to offer. We've got pro-people policies. We want to build an egalitarian society, and give us a chance. Listen to what we have to offer and see if you can give us MPs, councillors, or maybe the president in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should just ask, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we should learn to celebrate each other.
Exactly.
Because I know that people attack you online on social media. When you post something which is fruitful, no one will respond. But when you post something about yourself, then people start suddenly. So I just wanted to check on you.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming through. And I hope everything will go well. And I hope your campaign will be well and free from violence, of course. And yeah, congratulations on your team that made it, graduated yesterday.
Thank you very much. We keep on empowering women. Madzimai uyai kulead tokupe zvigaro tivake nyika
Nyika inovakwa nevene vayo.
inovakwa nemadzimai. Isu toti nyika inovakwa nemadzimai. Musha mukadzi, nyika mukadzi, mwana anotamba namai vake.
Wow, that's nice. Thank you so much for coming through. Hope to see you again when you come back to our studios. Thank you so much, our viewers, our listeners, and everyone who joined through these conversations as we were talking about the policies, the governance, and of course, the 16 days of activism against the gender-based violence. And I hope I hope we are also driving safe. Atidi bad drivers and it's musafambire pasiripo. And let's continue to love each other, like what the lead president has just said. Remember to go and register to vote, and remember to encourage other people to register to vote. And yes, like she said, nyika inovakwa nemadzimai. Until we meet again from us, the Zimbabwe Daily team is thank you and goodbye for now.